Hi everyone, welcome to a follow-up talk, a second episode. Always delighted when people return to the show. And in this case, I am delighted to be talking with comics creator Russ Leach. And those of you who are enjoying the video version of the talk might also currently be enjoying is that a sock puppet? Is that what that is
Yes,
on your?
that's my monkey. It's a tea monkey.
Love it. Love it, love it. Well, as I mentioned before I hit record, I'll mention a couple of your titles, Doctor Who being one of the big names. I know that you've done licensed material for a lot of worlds, visual worlds and comics worlds. Terminus at Fenton's Green being
Yeah,
another one of those. Uh,
yeah.
Chronic Argonauts, the world of H.G.
Wow.
Wells. Yeah.
Yeah, that goes back away.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. And Storm Chasers as well. So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, so a lovely range of fantasy storytelling, science fiction, and very interesting creations that you've shared with the world. Any big titles or experiences that I left out that you want to make sure to tag in here?
yeah. I suppose so. I had a run on Batman in
Hmm.
Europe last year and the year before, so it ran over 2 years.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I did a Marvel book, How to Draw the Marvel Way, for 4 years. Also, I've got my own books, Only Death Can Save Us. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I'll do.
and Batman was my way in as well to
Uh,
the world of comics. So absolutely, um, yeah. So I mentioned that, our first talk was sort of a broad view of your work, but in this episode, we're talking a little bit more about sort of the craft, the attention that you give to the work specifically. And so, in that direction, of course, we can travel in other directions, but when you think about your creative process, what is that like for you?
in what way? The mechanics of it, or the way I approach it? Or...
I think approach could be interesting to maybe start with.
Okay. I mean, you're always advised never to let your hobby be your job,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I haven't done that, which is the first no-no. But I'm fortunate. I had a long career in publishing, marketing, advertising, design, um, and I came away from that in 2010 and went back to illustration, which was my first love. But comic books have always been my first love. So I was fortunate that I had that before I went to something that I loved. So I'd had two solid careers up until that point. Um, that said, I do approach the whole process as a job.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
approach it as task rather than as art. That doesn't mean I don't feel the art while I'm doing it, or it doesn't give me artistic and creative feedback. Of course, it does.
Hmm.
But in order to make it work as something that you make money from, you have to be disciplined about it. You have to get up in the morning and come to the board. And if you're not feeling it that day, you still have to put it out. You still have to get it done.
Yeah.
So in that way, I feel that actually I'm fulfilling part of my dream because as a kid and as a young man as well, reading comics, being inspired by particular artists, part of that was like the dream was always to be in the bullpen at
Hmm.
Marvel. That was the big, that was it, however real that may or may not have been. Um, so part of the excitement of drawing comics, of creating comics, is to be paid for it as well. So to
Hmm.
have somebody, whoever that may be, whether that's a large corporate or whether that's just people buying your books from a crowdfunder,
Hmm.
either
Hmm.
way, it's just as important to feel appreciated in that way that people will pay money to have your work, that they feel that your work is solid enough that either they can give you a project to perform and so you professionally give it back to them, or that they just love what you do and are willing to part with money in order to have one of your books.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that professional aspect was big, has always been big for me. That the fact that I could do it as a job rather than just do it. So hopefully that's effectively what's keeping the problem of having your hobby as your job at bay for me personally,
Hmm.
because I enjoy it. I pinch myself every day that I'm able to do it. Um, and I'm still sort of getting up in the morning and making sure the job's done by the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and, that's a great merging of sort of the artistic appreciation as well as the sheer economics of
Yeah, yeah.
making the art form work. You mentioned materials. Any particular mechanics or materials that you prefer or have a particular leaning to?
I use Bristol paper to ink onto. Um, I used to be scared stiff of real inks, um, and coming from a publishing production background, I went straight to digital artwork when I came back to illustration. I had a Wacom already. It was just part of the tool set that I was already using.
Hmm.
Um, so I went straight to that, and actually, it gave me, to a degree, it gave me an accelerated learning process because I started concentrating on my style instead of trying to appreciate the technicalities of the tools.
Yeah.
And so I started spotting my blacks and making sure that I was understanding lighting and all kinds of stuff within the inking process, even though it was digital. And then my first solo book, Only Death Can Save Us Book One, I wanted in the campaign to have some physical artwork.
Mm.
So I actually did some inking, and through that process, completely fell in love with traditional inking. So now I don't ink digitally at all. I pencil in Clip Studio,
Hmm.
and I don't have any bells or whistles. I rarely use 3D or Trace or any of those things, but you do use them, and any artist who says they don't is a fibber. They're a liar. Okay, Neil Adams. I think I'm paraphrasing him by saying that any artist that says they haven't traced is not telling the truth.
Hmm.
And that's because he was an incredible professional and got the job done.
Hmm.
So coming from a design past, that was important to me. Getting jobs done, making sure I was professional and in on time, in on budget and in on time is better than perfect. So,
Hmm.
so from that perspective, I was using these tools anyway. So Clip Studio for me, without the bells and whistles, is effectively a digital version of a light box and a photocopier. So you'd sketch your work out. Sometimes a panel would be perfect, would be too big, so you put it on the photocopier, reduce it, stick it back on the light box, and then trace it off and do whatever, and then maybe ink it up afterwards. Although I never went beyond pencils early on in
Hmm.
my career. Um, and so now I use Clip Studio. I pump it out once I'm happy. I pump it out to 180 GSM Bristol board, which is quite a light board. I print out blue line and then I ink it with Pentel ink pens, sometimes a brush, and pretty much anything that's got a black ink in it, I'll
Hmm.
use in order to get the effects that I want. But completely fallen in love with the whole traditional process of laying ink down onto a piece of paper.
Nice, nice, yeah, and love how the line comes through, and I love what you said there about using whatever materials to get
Mm.
the effect that you want.
Oh yeah, I mean I've matured a lot over the last 10 years. I've been very very fortunate to be able to do it every day, and that makes a big difference. Going
Mm.
to the coal face every day, making sure that you draw something every day is key, to be honest. But also having to draw for story, having to draw for script, having to draw for a project, making sure you're in on time, all those things, they're just as important.
Mm.
So learning your craft over that period, I've been very, very fortunate. So I've done that, and it's meant that I've maybe been able to accelerate the process a little bit because of the position I'm in, and it's tough for younger people to get involved in comic books because there's not a lot of money in it.
Hmm.
And like I said, I had a couple of solid careers, and they've given me a financial basis to move forward on. So I'm fortunate in that aspect.
Yeah, yeah. As you're creating any particular go-to kind of places or rituals or methods for inspiration?
Oh, inspiration. Well, I have quite a collection of comic books.
Nice, nice.
I flick through them all the time. I also have several very good uh, reference books. Dynamic Anatomy by Hogarth is just a standard. Everyone should have that. I do often go back to How to Draw the Marvel Way by John Buscema and Stan Lee. I think
Mm,
it's a fabulous book. Um, and every now and then, when you're reaching too far, you can just step into that book and just realize how simple it should be.
uh-huh,
And that's
uh-huh.
not to say it's easy, not at all. Just economy of line and economy of thought, and how to get good storytelling over and do it in a solid way. And sometimes you need to go back to those reference books and have a little look. Um, Obviously, the normal ways that you get inspiration from books and films.
Mhm,
If
mhm.
you like, say, you really like something, it's going to stay with you. But most of my head is filled up with comic books, to be honest.
Nice,
Um,
nice.
but I often, my wife often, as much as I love staring at her because I love her, she often catches me looking at her or other people, even on the TV or whatever. I've been obsessed with backs recently. So I've been watching boxing and stuff. I mean, I watch fight stuff anyway because I do martial arts. So
Mhm,
I like to sort of see other styles and look at other techniques. But I've been watching it as well because of the form of the back and also looking at people. I'll stare at someone's nose or something because you just have to look around you,
mhm.
whether it's the cat laying down or watching a dog in the park or just keeping your eyes open. And often you'll see something and think, oh, I've never seen it in that way before, and
Mhm.
that really helps. It really helps when you draw it.
Nice, nice. Love that. And that leads really nicely into the next question. I was going to ask about comics in particular and what they afford you to do for thinking about stories and building characters. So it sounds like you have a wellspring of comics to draw from
Mm.
there in the room, but also in your mind as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's having a library in your head um, of examples of good storytelling, but also of things. One of the jobs I used to have before before you could draw onto a screen was I used to work in retail, and we do layouts of products in brochures. When print was king,
Mhm,
and you'd literally have to draw like it would be a toaster, a sunbed, somebody in a chair, anything, all kinds of stuff. And it ended up, then I would art direct it. I'd take it through to photography and through the whole retail process and make sure it got to the section of the brochure that I was in charge of.
mhm,
But while
mhm.
you were drawing the layouts, you had to get everything right so that the buyers could see that you got the correct product and it was in the right position. And the photographers, there was no point in giving them a tall chair if it was a wide sofa. You
Mhm.
had to make sure that you had everything right. And so that gave me a library of stuff in my head as well. So yeah, I've got that library of things to draw upon, as well as like all the reference I have about me. I think comics they provide they provide an instant access to the character that
Mhm.
maybe novels don't, um, and to a degree, it allows you to overact with a character that you couldn't do in a film.
Yeah,
I think it allows you to get deeper into a character quicker than the other two mediums.
nice.
That's how I'd see it. So,
Love it. Love it. Yeah. Well, I have one more official question that's on the list,
yeah.
and we can, of course, hit anything else that we might have missed. But anything that's currently on the drawing table, any projects that you would like to talk about that are current or upcoming, as well as places. I always like to conclude with places where people can go if they want to follow your work and learn a little bit more.
Okay. Well, currently, I don't know where this goes out. So I have a book called The Shadow Kingdom,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
is an adaptation of Robert E. Howard's first Cull the Conqueror story. Both Cull and The Shadow Kingdom are now in public domain. And my partner in crime, Randy Zimmerman,
Hmm.
who's been in the industry a long time, like over 4 decades, we both have a real appreciation for Howard's work. Mine came directly from comics like Conan and Carlin and Solomon Kane when I was a kid, not realizing even that they were all written by the same person
Hmm.
at the time. From his perspective, he read a lot of Howard's original prose, and we work together anyway. We do a podcast, a YouTube show on Friday mornings called Comics by Night, where we go through our favourite artists or go through books that we think are important. Um, and we just put them out and talk about the art, talk about the inspiration and what have you. Anyway, we got together. We had a chat while we were on the stream, and it turned. We were talking about Conan, I think, because Titan have a great Conan book out at the moment,
Hmm.
and Ablaze did effectively what I'm about to tell you that we're going to do in the future. They couldn't put Conan on the front because Conan itself was trademarked, but Conan the character is public domain.
Hmm.
So we were having this chat, and he said, "Well, you do know that the Shadow Kingdom is available in public domain," which I didn't at the time. And it's historically it's figured to be the first sword and sorcery
Oh, wow.
story. It's got a historic representation, and Howard, he wrote so much in his short life. Um, After the sword and sorcery stuff, he went on to do pirate stuff, apart from the
Hmm.
Solomon Kane stuff, but also boxing and westerns. He did everything. Fantastic adventure stories, which I think we're kind of lacking at the moment.
Hmm.
So anyway, I just said, well, I want to do it. And he said, well, okay. He said, I'll adapt it. And so he adapted it. He did a fantastic job because it's extremely close to what Howard wrote, the prose. It's got physical bits of prose in the graphic novel.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we did, I think it's 70 pages of graphic novel.
Wow.
And we're also putting the original prose with spot illustrations in there as well, so you can compare the two. So it's
Love it.
definitely a labour of love, and that's up on a platform called fundmycomic.com.
Hmm.
And as of this moment, we just hit 190 backers, so we're absolutely amazed, really really
Wonderful.
pleased. We've had great support, and it looks like we may well hit 200 by the end. So that ends on the 13th, I think. So if this goes out before then, you can pick it up at Fund My Comic. But if not, you can find out about my other stuff like Only Death Can Save Us.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and also, we'll be moving forward with the Cole character, much like Ablaze in Europe did the Sumerian, which is Conan.
Hmm.
We're going to do the Atlantean, which is Cole. So we're going to move forward with a black and white book that we'd like to do several times a year, and that'll be a 48 pager. And I want to do that in black and white as well because I've fallen in love with black and white again as well.
Nice.
And if you want to know about any of those things, or find me on my YouTube channel, Covered with Black Belt, or over on my social medias, best thing to do is just go to russleach.net or sorry, russleach.com, um, and sign up for the email list there. And
Hmm.
I don't fill people's email inboxes up. It's just once a month, just to say this is coming, this is happening. Um, and so yeah, that's about it really. Russleach.com. You can get everything there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, glad to hear the creative work moving forward. I thought you were in
Yeah.
the midst of a project, so glad to hear that that's happening. And I just have an affection for pulp stories, the sword
Mm.
and sorcery approach, and that kind of work. So excited to see what is ahead.
Yeah, well, I did the project and I already knew that I liked this kind of stuff anyway,
Hmm.
and then got involved. And by the time I'd finished it, I did effectively turn around to Randy and said, "Write more, make
Hmm.
our own stories because I want to continue doing this." it's a complete passion project, and we're absolutely loving it. So
Mhm.
hopefully everybody else will enjoy it as well.
Cool, cool. Well, awesome. Well, thank you for a second talk. Did we miss anything that you want to make sure to mention before we
Uh,
close
no,
out?
no, I think that's it. Just like I say, the email list for me is primary. If people can sign up for that, if they're interested in what I'm doing, obviously don't just sign up for it because you'll just end up cancelling it. If you're interested in what I'm doing, then please sign up for the email list because I can keep people abreast of what's going on. They can pick up books. The one great thing is because of social media, I actually bumped into a company called Red Dragon
Mm-hmm.
Publishing in Brazil, and they approached us and said we'd really like to publish your book in Brazil. So we're publishing it in black and white in Portuguese as well.
Wonderful.
So it really, so we can, via the email list I can tell people when that's out and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's the most important thing for me really. But yeah, just keep reading comics. It doesn't matter whether it's my comic or somebody else's comics. Good comics, good storytelling, and keep reading them because they're the most amazing medium, and they're all about communication.
Absolutely, absolutely. And may they live on for a very long
Yes,
time.
forever. Yes.
Well, I will end on that note and thank you again.
No, thank you for having me on.
Anytime, anytime.
Cheers.